For older Aussies who might inherit single shares from previous generations, like companies like Telstra or IAG was a big
NRMA
one.
ones, yeah.
NRMA. Is there diversification risk? Would there be benefit to selling those and buying ETFs instead? Especially for older people who don't know much about investing and these shares have landed in their lap. So almost every client that I had in 2015 or beyond, in that era when I was doing advice and retirement advice, would come in, we've got the old Telstra shares. And my parents either...
T1 or something.
They bought T1. I remember the prospectus that was sent in the mail and Dad's like, might do that. And, they would put a couple of grand in there or $5,000 and, a couple of things, issuer sponsored, so nightmare. What do we do with these shares? And maybe first we can explain what issuer sponsored is and the nightmare that it is versus like a chess sponsor or a HIN.
Yeah.
So I'll let you do that.
So acquiring shares, and it goes towards this, is you can acquire shares in different ways. If you're often proactive about it, might be I've set up a share broking account, I've decided I want to buy some shares, I know what I'm buying, I'm purchasing 1,000 or 5,000, and typically you've done that through a broker, either paid an external broker or used an online platform. That's going to be under a HIN or a HIN or a CHESS sponsored.
Yeah.
And that means you can have multiple shares under the same number and track it and transfer them and sell them much more conveniently. The other way to acquire shares is that you might have just inherited them, you might have been given them, or you might have subscribed to them when they first listed, either actively or just, passively, i.e., I had an NRMA insurance policy and all of a sudden now I've got some IAG shares. They will have come to you under an SRN.
Which is a security reference number.
Yeah, and if you want to know, I don't know which my ones are, you find a statement and you'll find a letter at the front of those. If it's an X, that means it's under a HIN. If it's an I, a capital I can sometimes look like a 1, that means it's under an SRN. Either way, you still own them, but how you then act on them or do something of those can be slightly different.
So it could be confusing. So the HIN is the holder identification number, and you did touch on it. I could open a NAB trade account, ComSec, SelfWealth, and they act as my broker, and I could hold 10 different shares or ETFs. Mm-hmm. Through my broker, they would place the trades. I've got the one HIN for that broker.
And all of the 10 shares that sit under them?
Have the same number.
All on the same HIN.
Yeah. But if I had, IAG and NRMA, or IAG, NRMA, Telstra, maybe
AMP or Combank or,
your SRN, there would be a different number for each parcel of shares.
Agreed. Yeah.
So that's just a bit of the lay of the land. When you've got a HIN, it's often linked to a broker.
Yep.
Easy to sell, log in, sell, done. The SRN, it's a pain in the ass to sell them. You might need to pay a broker to do a once off, and the process has changed over the last 10 years to try and offload them.
Security, different reasons. So often there's 2 or 3 ways to sell them if they're an SRN.
Yep.
One is I go and set up a broking account and I can transfer it in. So I go and set up a HIN with an X and I go, hey, by the way, I've got these existing shares under SRN. Can I move them across? Once they're across, you then go and sell them. There used to be a lot of one-off brokers that would allow you to sell under an SRN without having to set up a new account and put all your details in, etc. I believe they still exist, but they're less common because of a lot of anti-money laundering and security rules, etc. Or the third option is often the share registry, computer share or link, will have a service inbuilt where they will let you sell them as long as you meet certain conditions. Often it's less than, say, $15,000 in value. Often it can't be in joint names. It can't be in a trust or an SMSF or a company. So that's a whole path to go down. But so often you can just sell them that way to tidy them up.
Yeah. So we did mention another acronym CHESS, which is the Clearinghouse Electronic Subregister System. That's basically the system that allocates the HINs with the ASX.
Very good. I'm not sure I knew what CHESS stood for. So there you go. I've learned something today as well.
And what does the ASX stand for?
Australian Security Exchange.
Yes. Good boy.
An exchange often has an E in front, but ASX sounds better.
And securities aren't just shares.
Fair. Yeah.
They can be bonds. They can be anything traded.
Hybrids. Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, just checking you're up to speed, my friend.
I've still got it.
Okay, so all that housekeeping aside,
come back to the question around
Jess's question. She might have been talking with her parents or uncles and aunt, like, oh, we've got these shares. I think we need to look at perspective here. So if someone's got $300,000 or $400,000 in super, they might have $3,000 or $1,000 of IAG shares. I think in that instance, Martin, and I know this with my parents, just for housekeeping and ease of paperwork, just piss them off.
Yeah. Come back to why we acquired them, and often we haven't acquired them, just land on our lap. Are they nice to keep and hold? Perhaps, but going back to, are we really getting a return on them? Are they probably diversified? No, they're not, because they're in one stock. If we're on to Centrelink, that's just more things we have to report to Centrelink. If we're retired and no longer doing a tax return, do we want to declare that dividend and try and get the franking credit back? If we're going to hold them forever and pass it on the estate, that's just more paperwork the estate has to tidy up and fix. And are your kids going to really want half of your IAG shares in 20 years? Probably not. So in most cases, part for the diversification, but part what you're saying, just a simplification, we would often tidy them up and sell them.
Yeah. So part one, housekeeping, relatively small amounts in your world. Now, relatively small amounts, if you've got $3 million in super and $30,000 of IAG shares, probably still housekeeping, might want to tidy it up. So it's all relative to the situation.
Yeah.
Now, if we up this a little bit further, that's kind of the first peg. The second peg, what if, mum who was 94 died, and we have talked about this before on the show, she left $500,000 worth of CBA shares to someone in their 50s or 60s. Well, that's now a real discussion about diversification.
Yeah, definitely. And that goes down to, well, what happens in that case? So let's say mum hasn't sold them when she's alive in her 90s. That goes into the estate. The estate can decide, do we want to sell these CBA shares and distribute cash to the beneficiaries, or do we want to pass on the shares? That's an optional decision the estate's got to make, and there's pros and cons to that and potentially a tax event around that. But let's assume that the estate hasn't sold them and they've passed them on, either to one beneficiary or divided by 2 into 2. Exactly the point. If I'm now 62, I've got 500,000 in super and I've inherited 400,000 of CommBank shares.
You're overweight pretty heavily in CommBank.
Half my retirement wealth is kind of in one stock. I think we need
pretty
to
good
assess
stock in the last couple of years,
Definitely
might I say.
I had a detailed meeting with a client yesterday who very close to this example, and it has been a great stock, and it's going to have some tax headaches to sell, but the concentration risk and the lack of diversification from the question is definitely something to consider.
But every good stock that has gone to the moon and done well, there's a million others that haven't, and that's why we just have to step back, have a cold shower, and say that. My name is Glen James, joined by Martin McGrath, Financial Edge Group, here on Retire Right. Welcome to the show. Martin, you ready to have a chat?
Let's cover some questions.
Hey, it's Glen here. Thank you so much for watching today's video. You made it to the end. Can I ask a favor? Can you hit that like button and maybe hit subscribe if you want to get notified when we release further videos just like this one, whether you watch the Money, Money, Money podcast or Retire Right. And remember, if you want to learn more about investing, I've got an investing book, The Quick Start Guide to Investing, and there's a link in the description to get your hands on a copy. Thank you so much. Bye.